What happens when the weakest wolf in the pack turns out to be the one prophesied to rule them all? For Sarah Winters, life as an Omega meant keeping her head down, her voice quiet, and her dreams small. In the Silverwood pack, Omegas existed at the bottom, beneath the Alphas who commanded, beneath the Betas who enforced, even beneath the children who would one day outrank her. She cleaned the pack house, served meals at ceremonies, and endured the whispered pity that followed her like a shadow. Her parents, once respected Betas, had fallen from grace the day she presented as Omega at 16. They blamed her. The pack blamed her, and she had learned to blame herself. But when Alpha Riker Blackthorn rejected her as his fated mate in front of the entire pack during the winter solstice ceremony, everything changed. And what happens next, no one was prepared for. Not the pack that cast her out. Not the Alpha who sealed his own doom, and certainly not the ancient guardians who had been waiting centuries for her to fall. The great hall of the Silverwood pack blazed with firelight and anticipation. Winter solstice, the night when the moon goddess revealed fated mates through the sacred ceremony. Sarah stood at the edge of the crowd, as always, trying to make herself invisible among the pressed bodies. The scent of lavender and morning dew that clung to her skin seemed too delicate, too soft for this space filled with the musk of power and dominance. She shouldn't have even been here. Omegas rarely received fated mates. They were considered too weak to carry strong bloodlines, too fragile to survive the intensity of a true mate bond. But the moon goddess worked in mysterious ways, or so the elders said. Alpha Riker Blackthorn stood at the center of the ceremonial circle, magnificent and terrible. At 26, he commanded the Silverwood pack with an iron fist. His scent, forest and embers with an edge of ozone and steel, dominated the space, making every wolf's instincts bow in recognition of his authority. His dark hair was pulled back, revealing a face carved from stone and ambition. He would choose his Luna tonight, everyone said. Probably Kira Vaughn, the stunning beta female who had been circling him for months, her scent of cinnamon and iron marking her as a formidable warrior. The pack elder stepped forward, her ancient hands trembling as she raised the ceremonial blade. On this longest night, we honor the moon goddess. Let those seeking their mate step forward. Sarah felt it before she understood it. A pull, golden and inevitable, tugging at her very soul. Her wolf, usually so quiet and subdued, suddenly surged within her consciousness. Mate! 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 No, it couldn't be. But her feet moved without permission, carrying her forward through the crowd. Gasps rippled outward as the Omega pushed through Betas and Alphas alike, drawn by a force she couldn't resist. The scent of forest and embers grew stronger, overwhelming, intoxicating. Every wolf in the hall turned to stare. Riker's head snapped toward her, his silver eyes widening. She watched his nostrils flare, watched him catch her scent of lavender and wildflowers. She watched the exact moment recognition and horror crossed his face. The bond snapped into place like a lightning strike. It was beautiful and agonizing, a golden thread weaving between their souls, tying them together in a way that transcended pack law and social hierarchy. She felt his strength, his ambition, his revulsion. The mate bond didn't lie. It showed her everything, including the immediate rejection forming in his mind. No. His voice cut through the hall like a blade. Absolutely not. The thread between them pulled taut, began to fray. Sarah stumbled, clutching her chest as pain lanced through her. Alpha, please! You? Kira's laugh was cruel, cutting. Her cinnamon iron scent sharpened with malicious delight. The goddess paired our Alpha with an Omega? This must be a mistake. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Sarah's parents stood frozen near the back, their faces ashen with shame. They wouldn't help her. They never did. Riker stepped forward, his massive frame towering over her. The scent of ozone intensified, the storm before thunder. I, Alpha Riker Blackthorn of the Silverwood Pack, reject you, Sarah Winters, as my mate. I deny the bond the moon goddess has woven. You are unworthy of standing at my side, unworthy of carrying the future of this pack. Each word was a dagger. No, Sarah gasped, but he wasn't finished. By the laws of our kind, I sever this bond publicly and permanently. I choose strength. I choose power. I choose, he turned to Kira, who preened under his attention. I choose a Luna, who can stand beside me, not beneath me. The bond shattered. There was no other word for it. The golden thread didn't just break, it exploded, sending shock waves of agony through Sarah's entire body. She collapsed to the stone floor, screaming as the mate bond tore away from her soul. It felt like her chest was being ripped open, like every bone in her body was breaking simultaneously. The rejection wasn't just emotional, it was physical, visceral, a punishment written into the very fabric of their nature. Wolves whimpered and turned away, unable to watch. Even Betis, who had tormented her, looked uncomfortable. A rejection was brutal under any circumstances, but a public rejection during the sacred ceremony? It was a cruelty that bordered on taboo. Remove her, Riker commanded, his voice cold and distant. He had already turned back to Kira, already dismissing the Omega writhing in pain at his feet. Two pack guards grabbed Sarah under her arms and hauled her up. Her legs wouldn't work. Her wolf howled inside her mind. A sound of such devastating loss that Sarah thought she might go mad from it. They dragged her through the hall, past faces filled with pity, disgust, relief that it wasn't them. Out into the winter night. The cold hit her like a physical blow. Snow fell in thick curtains, already accumulating on the ground. The temperature had dropped well below freezing, and the wind carried the promise of a blizzard. The guards dumped her unceremoniously in the snow outside the pack house gates. "The Alpha has spoken," one of them said, not unkindly. "You're no longer Silverwood. You need to leave the territory by dawn, or you'll be hunted as a rogue." But Sarah tried to form words through chattering teeth. "I have nothing. No supplies. No. Should have thought of that before you embarrassed the Alpha." The other guard's voice was harder. "Go to the human towns if you survive the night. You're not pack anymore." The gates slammed shut with a finality that echoed in her hollow chest. Sarah tried to stand, but her legs gave out immediately. The pain from the rejection still pulsed through her in waves, making it impossible to think clearly. Her wolf was silent now, retreating so deep inside that Sarah feared she'd lost her entirely. Without her wolf, she couldn't shift. Without shifting, she couldn't survive the wilderness in a blizzard. She crawled at first, then staggered to her feet, using the fence for support. The lights of the pack house grew distant as she stumbled into the forest. She had no destination, no plan. She just moved, driven by the primal need to get away from the place that had caused her such pain. The wind howled through the trees, carrying away any scent trail she might have left. Snow soaked through her thin ceremonial dress within minutes. She'd been dressed for the indoor ceremony, not for a death march through a winter storm. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time lost meaning. Sarah's feet went numb first, then her hands. She fell multiple times, each time taking longer to get back up. The forest around her was dark and unfamiliar. She'd been kept close to the pack house her entire life, never allowed to explore the wild territories beyond. "This is it," she thought distantly, as she collapsed against a tree. "This is how I die." Part of her welcomed it. The pain would stop. The humiliation would end. Her parents would finally be free of the shame she'd brought them. Riker could choose his strong Luna and build his powerful legacy without the stain of an Omega mate haunting him. The snow continued to fall, beginning to cover her like a burial shroud. She closed her eyes. Time slipped away into darkness. Warmth. That was the first thing Sarah registered as consciousness reluctantly returned. Not the blazing warmth of a fire, but the steady, living warmth of bodies pressed close. Her eyes fluttered open, struggling to focus in the dim light. A cave. She was in a cave, and she wasn't alone. Wolves surrounded her. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as her vision cleared. Massive wolves, each one larger than any alpha she'd ever seen, formed a protective circle around her. Their fur ranged from silver to black to auburn. And their eyes glowed with an intelligence that was almost unsettling. 1, she counted mentally, her thoughts sluggish. The silver wolf directly in front of her, its head easily level with her chest, even though she was lying down. 2, a black wolf to her left, scars crossing its muzzle. 3, an auburn female, her eyes a startling amber. Her gaze traveled around the circle. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 enormous wolves had formed a living barrier around her, their combined body heat keeping her alive through the night. She should have been terrified. Rogues' wolves, and these had to be rogues. No pack harbored wolves this size. Were dangerous, unpredictable, often mad from living without a pack structure. But she felt no fear. Only a strange sense of recognition, of safety. The silver wolf in front of her stirred, and before her eyes, it began to shift. Bones flowed and reformed, not the painful snapping she'd always heard described, but a fluid transformation that looked almost graceful. Within seconds, a man knelt where the wolf had been. He was older than Riker, perhaps in his mid-30s, with silver-threaded dark hair and a face marked by old scars. His eyes were the same brilliant silver as his wolf's, and his scent, aged oak, winter snow, pine, and storm, washed over her with an authority that made her Omega instincts sit up and take notice. This was no ordinary wolf. This was power incarnate. He wrapped a cloak around himself with practiced ease, then met her gaze steadily. "You're alive," he said, his voice a deep rumble. "Good. We were worried we'd found you too late." Sarah's voice came out as a croak. Who are you?" A slight smile touched his scarred face. "My name is Theron Ashbourne. These," he gestured to the wolves around them, "are the Shadow Guard. And we've been waiting for you, Sarah Winters, for a very long time." "Waiting for me?" The words made no sense. "How do you know my name?" "Because you're in the prophecy." His silver eyes held hers with an intensity that made her want to look away. "We've been searching for 20 years. We knew you'd been born, but someone had hidden you well. Suppressed your scent, your power, everything that would have helped us find you." His expression darkened. "When we caught the edge of your true scent on the wind last night, lavender and morning dew. But underneath, wildflowers touched by moonlight and ancient power. We knew. And then we felt the rejection. I don't understand." Sarah tried to sit up, but her body protested. She was weak. So weak. "I'm nobody. I'm just an Omega. There's no prophecy about me." "You're not an Omega." Theron's voice was gentle but firm. "You never were. Someone bound your power when you were an infant, locked your true nature away so deeply that even you couldn't feel it. They made you believe you were weak, made everyone believe it. But the binding had a flaw." "What flaw?" "A mate bond strong enough would shatter it." His smile turned sharp, predatory. Your alpha didn't just reject you, little one. He set you free. The words hung in the air between them, impossible and terrifying. Sarah shook her head, pulling the furs that had been draped over her closer. You're wrong. You have to be wrong. I can barely feel my wolf anymore. She's gone silent since— She's not gone, Theron interrupted. She's waking up. The binding is breaking piece by piece. It will hurt, but when it's finished— He leaned forward, his scent intensifying. You'll understand why we've been waiting, why the prophecy was written centuries ago, why the moon goddess herself guided us to find you before you died in that storm. Another wolf shifted, the auburn female. She was tall and lean, with a warrior's build and those striking amber eyes. Give her time, Theron, she said, wrapping a cloak around herself. She's been through trauma. The rejection alone would have killed a normal wolf. But she's not normal, is she, Mara? Theron didn't look away from Sarah. Even now, I can feel her power beginning to stir. Can't you? Mara tilted her head, inhaling deeply. Yes, she admitted. It's faint, but it's there, like dawn breaking after an endless night. Sarah wanted to protest, to deny everything they were saying. But exhaustion dragged at her. The pain from the rejection still lingered in her bones, and now there was something else. A strange pressure building in her chest, like something too large trying to fit in too small a space. Rest, Theron said, his voice carrying a command that her Omega instincts wanted to obey. But underneath that command was something else. Respect, even reverence. You're safe here. The Shadow Guard doesn't let anything happen to those under our protection. And you, Sarah Winters, are the most important wolf alive. She wanted to argue. She wanted to demand answers. But her eyes were already closing, her body surrendering to the exhaustion and pain. As she drifted off, she heard Theron speaking to the others in low tones. Send word. Tell them we found her. The matriarch lives. Sarah woke to find herself alone except for two wolves, the scarred black one and a gray female with intelligent green eyes. Both watched her attentively as she sat up, taking stock of her body. The pain was different now. The sharp agony of the rejection had dulled to a persistent ache, but that strange pressure in her chest had intensified. It felt like her wolf was pacing inside her, growing larger with each circuit, pushing against boundaries that had always been there, but that Sarah had never noticed before. Theron entered the cave carrying firewood and fresh game. He'd clearly been hunting. He shifted back to human form, with that same fluid grace, and dressed quickly before approaching. How do you feel? Confused. Sore. Sarah pulled the furs closer. You said someone bound my power. Who? Why? Theron settled across from her, building up the fire. That's a longer story, but I can tell you what we know from the prophecy and from our own investigations. He fed wood into the growing flames. 25 years ago, there was an oracle. She spoke a prophecy that shook the entire supernatural world. It spoke of a matriarch, a female wolf of such power that she would unite the packs, end centuries of territorial wars, and bring balance back to our kind. But the prophecy came with a warning. What warning? That she would be born marked by moonlight and loss, that those closest to her would fear her power and try to smother it, that she would rise only after betrayal, only after being cast to the very edge of death. His silver eyes reflected the firelight. You match every sign, Sarah. Born during a lunar eclipse 22 years ago. Presented as the weakest rank despite coming from beta bloodlines. Rejected by your fated mate publicly. Left to die in a winter storm. The pieces were falling into place in a way that made Sarah's stomach churn. My parents, she whispered. They bound me. Theron nodded slowly. We believe so. They would have been terrified. A prophecy speaking of their daughter becoming a matriarch, a wolf of legend, more powerful than any alpha, but also speaking of loss and betrayal. They tried to protect you the only way they knew how. They bound your power, suppressed your true rank, and raised you as an Omega to keep you safe and small and unnoticed. They ruined my life. The words came out bitter, broken. They made me weak. They let me be humiliated, abused, treated as lesser for 22 years because they were afraid. Fear makes people do terrible things, Mara said quietly. She'd shifted and dressed while Sarah slept, even to those they love. But the binding is breaking now, Theron continued. The rejection severed not just the mate bond, but the magical constraints that held your wolf captive. You're going to feel strange for the next few days. Your wolf will grow stronger, your senses will sharpen, and eventually, you'll shift into your true form for the first time. As if summoned by his words, Sarah's wolf suddenly moved inside her. Not the tentative stirring she'd always known, but a powerful surge that made her gasp. And for the first time in her life, she heard her wolf speak clearly in her mind. Sister. Finally. I've been screaming for so long. Can you hear me now? Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. I can hear you. Good. Because we have much to do. And those who hurt us will learn exactly what they awakened when they cast us out to die. The wolf's voice was nothing like Sarah expected. It wasn't meek or submissive. It was ancient and powerful and absolutely furious. It was the voice of something that had been caged for far too long. Theron watched the play of emotions across her face with knowing eyes. She's speaking to you. Yes. Sarah wiped her tears away. She's not what I expected. She's what you've always been, just hidden. He stood, offering her his hand. Come. You need to eat. Regain your strength. The full transformation will come when your body is ready. Until then, we train you. We teach you what you are. And we prepare you for what comes next. What comes next? Sarah took his hand, letting him help her to her feet. Her legs were shaky but held. Eventually, the Silverwood Pack will learn you survived. They'll either come to beg forgiveness or to finish what the rejection started. His smile was cold. Either way, you'll need to be ready. You'll need to be what you were always meant to be. And what's that? Their queen. Days turned to weeks in the hidden sanctuary of the Shadow Guard. The cave system was vast, carved deep into the mountainside, with chambers that opened to stunning vistas of the wild territories beyond any pack's claim. 10 wolves lived here, the 10 who had saved her life, and each one, Sarah learned, had their own story of how the prophecy had brought them together. Theron was their leader, a former alpha who'd walked away from his pack when the Oracle's vision showed him a greater purpose. Mara was a master tracker, exiled from her birth pack for refusing an arranged mating. There was Cade, the scarred black wolf who rarely spoke, but communicated volumes with his steady presence. Lyric, a white female whose healing abilities were legendary. Darius, Finn, Rowan, Sage, Zeke, and Ember, each one powerful, each one bearing scars from lives lived on the fringes of wolf society, each one bound by oath to protect the matriarch when she finally emerged. They called themselves the Unchained, and they trained Sarah with a patience and dedication she'd never experienced. Your Omega upbringing wasn't entirely wasted, Theron said one morning as they worked on sensing exercises. Omegas learn to read emotions, to navigate pack dynamics through observation. You have empathic abilities that most wolves never develop. We just need to amplify them now that your power is growing." Sarah closed her eyes, reaching out with senses she was only beginning to understand. She could feel the shadow guard around her, their emotions, their intentions, the steady pulse of their wolves beneath human skin. It was overwhelming at first, but she was learning to filter, to focus. "I feel Mara is worried about something in the North Territories." "Good." Theron's approval warmed her. "What else?" "Cade is in pain. His old shoulder injury is bothering him." She opened her eyes. I think I could help." "Then do it." Sarah approached Cade hesitantly. The massive warrior watched her with dark, unreadable eyes. She placed her hand on his shoulder. And for the first time, she pushed with her power instead of just sensing. Warmth flowed through her palm, golden and soothing, and she felt the knotted tension in Cade's muscles release. He rolled his shoulder experimentally, then gave her a rare smile. "Better. Thank you." "You have a healer's touch," Lyric observed, "but also a leader's command. Feel how naturally he accepted your power? He didn't resist at all. His wolf recognized your authority." "I'm not a leader," Sarah protested, but even as she said it, she knew it was becoming less true. Her wolf was growing stronger every day, and with that growth came a confidence Sarah had never possessed. She was beginning to understand hierarchy not as a place where she existed at the bottom, but as a structure she could shape and command. The first time she accidentally used Alpha Command, she'd been breaking up an argument between Finn and Darius over hunting strategies. "Enough!" The word came out layered with power, and both warriors immediately dropped their heads in submission. The silence that followed was deafening. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean," Sarah began. "Don't apologize." Theron's voice was thick with satisfaction. That was pure Alpha Command. Actually, stronger than Alpha Command. That was what the ancients called sovereign voice, the ability to compel obedience from any wolf, regardless of rank. "But I'm not. You're not an alpha," he agreed. "You're something older. Something the packs have forgotten in their obsession with rank and dominance. You're a matriarch, the shepherd, the mother, the queen. You command not through force, but through absolute right." The nights were spent around fires, listening to the guard share stories of the old ways, of times before the rigid pack structures, when powerful females led tribes and made laws that protected rather than suppressed. Of the moon goddess's original design, before ambition and war twisted it into dominance hierarchies and territorial conflict. "The prophecy speaks of restoration," Ember told her one evening. The youngest of the guard, she was a fierce red wolf with an equally fierce spirit. "You're meant to bring back the old ways, to remind the packs that strength isn't just about who can fight hardest, but about who can unite, heal, and protect." "That's a lot of pressure for someone who couldn't even stand up for herself 2 weeks ago," Sarah said quietly. "You always had the strength," Mara corrected. "You just didn't have access to it." "There's a difference." The transformation began on the full moon. Sarah had felt it building all day, a restlessness, a heat beneath her skin. Her wolf was pacing, agitated, eager. As moonlight spilled across the mountain, Theron led her to a clearing where the guard waited in a circle. "It's time," he said simply. "Your wolf is ready." "Are you?" "We are," her wolf said firmly in her mind. "Let me show you what we really are." Sarah nodded, stepping into the center of the circle. She'd seen wolves shift hundreds of times, watched the brutal crack and break of bones, heard the screams that often accompanied the transformation. She braced herself for agony. But when her wolf surged forward, there was no pain. Her body flowed like water, like moonlight given form. Bones didn't snap. They moved, reorganizing themselves with a fluid grace that felt more like dancing than breaking. Her skin rippled as fur emerged, silver white and glowing faintly in the moonlight. She felt herself growing larger, far larger than any wolf she'd ever seen. The transformation was beautiful, transcendent, a homecoming. When it was complete, Sarah stood on 4 legs and looked down at Tehran. Down. He was a tall man, but her wolf form towered over him. She was easily twice the size of his already massive wolf, her fur rippling with an ethereal glow that seemed to emanate from within. Her eyes, she couldn't see them, but she felt them burning with power, ancient and absolute. Is this really me? She thought in wonder. This is us, her wolf corrected. This is what they tried to hide. This is what they feared. A howl built in her chest, primal and undeniable. When she released it, the sound shook the trees, sent birds bursting from their roosts, and echoed across the mountains like a declaration of war and a promise of protection all at once. The Shadow Guard shifted as one, their own massive forms pale comparisons to hers. They joined their voices to hers, a chorus of power that announced to any wolf within 100 miles. The matriarch had risen. Sarah learned control through practice and patience. Shifting became easier, more natural, until she could flow between forms as easily as breathing. Her senses in wolf form were beyond anything she'd imagined. She could track a scent for miles, hear a heartbeat from across the clearing, see in perfect clarity, even in the deepest darkness. But it was her other abilities that truly set her apart. Empathic healing is rare, Lyric explained as they worked together. But you have it stronger than anyone I've ever met. You can feel another wolf's injuries, their emotional wounds, and you can heal both. Sarah practiced on the guard, mending old hurts and current aches. Each time she used her power, it grew stronger, more refined. She began to understand the difference between surface healing and deep restoration, between numbing pain and actually addressing its source. She could also sense deception, feel the truth beneath words. When Rowan tried to hide his homesickness for the pack he'd left behind, Sarah felt it like a discordant note in a song. She sat with him through the night, letting him talk through his loss, helping him process the grief he'd been suppressing. "You're a natural leader," he told her as dawn broke. "Not because you're the strongest or the most dominant, because you actually care about us as individuals, because you see us." The found family dynamic that developed surprised Sarah most of all. These wolves who had been strangers weeks ago now felt like the pack she'd never had. They teased her, challenged her, protected her, and most importantly, they respected her. Not out of fear or obligation, but because she'd earned it. Theron became her anchor, the one she turned to when doubt crept in. There was something growing between them, a connection that went beyond prophecy or duty. The way he looked at her had shifted from reverence to something warmer, more personal. His scent of oak and winter snow called to her in ways the mate bond with Riker never had. "Chosen mates are stronger than fated mates," he told her one evening as they walked the perimeter. "Fated mates are handed to you by the moon goddess, but chosen mates are bonds built on respect, trust, and genuine affection. They can't be rejected because they're forged through free will." "Is that what we are?" Sarah asked quietly. "Chosen mates?" "That depends." He stopped, turning to face her. The moonlight caught the silver in his hair, made his scars look like badges of honor rather than flaws. "I've been searching for you for 20 years, Sarah. At first it was duty. The prophecy commanded it. But now?" His hand came up to cup her cheek gently. "Now I'm choosing you. Not because of what you are or what you're meant to become, but because of who you are. The woman who cares for a homesick warrior. who heals without being asked, who faces her fears every day and keeps moving forward. That's who I choose. If you'll have me." Sarah's wolf purred in approval. This felt right in a way the bond with Riker never had. This was a partnership between equals, not a hierarchy. "I choose you too," she whispered. When they kissed, a wave of power washed over the clearing, golden and warm. The mate bond settled into place, not forced by the moon goddess, but crafted by their own hearts. It felt like coming home. The Shadow Guard howled their approval, accepting Theron's claim and Sarah's choice. But their peace wasn't destined to last. It was Sage who brought the warning. His brown wolf, racing into camp with urgency radiating from every line of his body. He shifted quickly, breathing hard. Scouts. Silverwood scouts crossed into the neutral territories. 3 of them. They caught Sarah's scent. Sarah's blood went cold. They know I'm alive. More than that. Sage's expression was grim. One of them got close enough to feel your power. They fled back to Silverwood territory an hour ago. The pack will know by nightfall. Theron's jaw clenched. Then they'll mobilize. Riker won't be able to ignore this. A rejected mate who survived and gained power? It's either a threat to his authority or a chance to reclaim what he threw away. Let them come. Sarah's voice was steadier than she felt. Her wolf stirred within, eager and ready. I'm not the wolf they cast out anymore, and it's time they learned that. We need to be strategic about this, Mara cautioned. The Silverwood pack has over 200 wolves. We're 11. Even with your power, the odds don't matter. Sarah stood, her confidence surprising even herself. They'll send a war party first, probably 20 to 30 wolves. Enough to look strong, but not enough to leave their territory undefended. Riker will come. Kira will come. And when they see what I've become, they'll have a choice. Kneel or fight. And if they choose to fight, Darius asked, then they learn why the prophecy called me matriarch. Sarah met each of their gazes. But I need to do this my way. No killing unless absolutely necessary. These are wolves who were raised under a corrupt system. They don't know any better. I won't start my reign by slaughtering the ignorant. Mercy is a powerful tool, Lyric agreed. Used correctly, it inspires loyalty better than fear ever could. They had 3 days before the war party arrived. 3 days to prepare, to plan, to ready themselves for confrontation. Sarah spent those days meditating on her power, understanding its depths. She could feel every wolf within miles, their numbers, their strengths, their intentions. Her empathic abilities had grown so strong that she could read entire emotional landscapes, understand pack dynamics just by sensing the connections between wolves. They're afraid, she told Theron on the morning of the 3rd day. The Silverwood wolves, they're following Riker out of obedience and fear of his authority. But many of them don't want this confrontation. They're confused about why their alpha is mobilizing against a lone Omega. They don't know you're the matriarch yet. No, but they will. The war party arrived at sunset, their howls announcing their presence long before they crested the ridge. Sarah stood in the clearing with the Shadow Guard flanking her, watching as wolves poured over the hilltop. She counted them. 27. All strong betas and alphas, warriors chosen for their fighting prowess. And at their head, exactly as she'd predicted, stood Riker in his massive black wolf form, with Kira's cinnamon brown wolf at his side. The Silverwood wolves stopped at the edge of the clearing, clearly surprised to find their quarry ready and waiting. Even more surprising, the 10 enormous wolves standing with her, each one radiating power that made the war party instinctively step back. Riker shifted first, his naked human form rippling with barely contained aggression. His scent of forest and embers filled the air, but underneath it, Sarah detected the acrid tang of uncertainty and growing fear. "Sarah Winters," his voice carried across the clearing. "You survived. Disappointed?" She remained in human form, flanked by Theron and Mara. "Did you hope the storm would finish what your rejection started?" "I hoped you'd have the sense to go to the human lands, to accept your place." His silver eyes narrowed as he took in her appearance. She looked different now, stronger, healthier, radiating a confidence that had never been there before. And her scent, it had changed. The lavender and morning dew were still present, but now there was something else, something that made his wolf uneasy. "Instead, you've gathered rogues, and returned to what? Take revenge?" "I gathered nothing." Sarah's voice was calm. "They found me, saved me, helped me understand what I really am." Kira shifted, her beautiful face twisted with contempt. "What you really are? You're an Omega, a reject. The Alpha made his choice, and you was never an Omega." Sarah cut her off with quiet authority. "That was a lie. A binding placed on me as an infant to hide what I truly am. A binding your Alpha's rejection shattered." Murmurs rippled through the Silverwood wolves. Riker's face darkened. "What are you talking about?" "There's a prophecy," Sarah said. "An old one. Perhaps you've heard it? The elders used to recite it when I was young, before they decided it was just a fairy tale." She recited the words that the Shadow Guard had taught her. "When moonlight marks the longest night, and betrayal cuts deeper than steel, the matriarch will rise from death's own door, marked by loss, but born to heal. She will be denied by power's pride, cast out by those who fear her throne. But wolves of old will find her dying and help her claim what's truly hers alone. She'll unite the broken, heal the bleeding command with mercy, rule with grace, and those who scorned her, threw her to the cold, will kneel before her or face their final fate." The words hung in the air like a judgment. Sarah watched recognition dawn on several faces, watched Riker's expression shift from contempt to uncertainty to something that might have been fear. "That's just a story," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" Sarah stepped forward. "Then explain this." She shifted. It was effortless now, a mere thought carrying her from human to wolf. Her transformation was fluid, beautiful, and absolutely undeniable. When she stood before them on 4 legs, she towered over every wolf present. Her silver-white fur glowed with ethereal light, and her eyes, blazing gold like captured sunlight, fixed on Riker with an intensity that made him stagger back. The war party erupted in chaos. Wolves whimpered and tried to retreat. Betas dropped their heads in involuntary submission. Even Kira looked terrified, her cinnamon iron scent souring with fear. But Riker, to his credit, held his ground even as his wolf screamed at him to submit. That's impossible. Your parents said—" "Your parents were terrified." Sarah's voice filled every mind present, projected through pure mental command. The Shadow Guard had taught her this, how to speak directly to other wolves' thoughts. They bound me to protect me from a prophecy they feared. But you, Riker Blackthorn, you broke that binding. When you rejected me, you set me free." She moved forward, each step deliberate. The warriors parted before her like water, unable to hold their ground before her presence. "You called me weak. You called me unworthy. You cast me out to die because you couldn't imagine an Omega standing beside you as Luna." She stopped directly in front of him, looking down at his human form from her massive wolf height. "But I was never meant to be your Luna. I was meant to be your queen." Kira moved before anyone could stop her, probably operating on instinct and wounded pride. She shifted mid-leap. Her claws extended as she launched herself at Sarah's exposed flank. It was over in seconds. Sarah moved with a speed that defied her size. One massive paw caught Kira midair, slamming her to the ground with enough force to drive the breath from her lungs. Sarah's jaws closed around the back of Kira's neck, not biting, but holding her in a dominance grip that every wolf present understood. Submit or die. Kira went limp immediately, whimpering in terror and submission. The scent of her fear flooded the clearing. Sarah held her there for a long moment, letting every wolf see and understand the power dynamic, then released her. Kira scrambled away, shifting back to human and curling into a submissive ball. That was your mistake, Sarah told her, her mental voice cold. You attacked before thinking, acted on emotion instead of strategy. This is why you would have failed as Luna. She turned back to Riker and the war party. You came here to do what? Kill me? Drag me back to your pack? Finish what the rejection started? The Shadow Guard chose that moment to reveal their true forms. 10 wolves shifted in perfect synchronization. But these weren't the already massive wolves the Silverwood pack had seen before. These were their true forms, dire wolves, creatures of legend, each one nearly as large as Sarah herself. Ancient protectors, warriors of myth, their combined presence was overwhelming. The war party broke completely. Wolves whimpered and cowered. Several fled outright, racing back toward Silverwood territory. Only the strongest, Riker, Kira, and a handful of loyal warriors remained, and even they looked seconds away from running. Riker's legs gave out. He fell to his knees, his head bowed. Mercy, he whispered. The word was ash in his mouth. I didn't know. I didn't understand. Please. You didn't know because you never looked beyond rank and tradition, Sarah said. You saw Omega and assumed worthless. You saw female and assumed weak. You let fear and ambition guide your decisions instead of wisdom. She shifted back to human form, standing before the kneeling Alpha. Theron moved to her side, draping a cloak over her shoulders. His presence was a comfort, a reminder of what true partnership looked like. You rejected me publicly, Sarah said quietly. You humiliated me before the entire pack. You cast me out to die in a blizzard with no supplies, no protection, no chance of survival. Tell me, Riker Blackthorn, why should I show you mercy? Because you're the matriarch, his voice was broken. Because you're everything I should have been and failed to become. Because he finally looked up, meeting her eyes with something that might have been genuine remorse. Because I was wrong about everything, and I will spend the rest of my life regretting that I threw away the greatest gift the moon goddess ever gave me. Sarah studied him for a long moment. Her empathic senses told her he was genuine, or at least believed he was in this moment. But she also felt his pride, still wounded, still struggling with the submission being forced upon him. Mercy isn't weakness, she said finally, but neither is justice. You will return to the Silverwood pack. You will call a full assembly, and you will tell them the truth, all of it, that you rejected your true mate, that she survived and became what prophecy foretold, that the old laws and old hierarchies are broken. And then? Riker asked. Then you will step down as Alpha. Gasps rose from the remaining warriors. Riker's face paled. The Silverwood pack needs new leadership. Someone who understands that strength comes in many forms. Someone who values all pack members, not just the powerful. She looked around at the warriors who remained. I will be coming to Silverwood in 3 days. Any wolf who wishes to join me, who wishes to help build a new structure, one based on merit and compassion rather than force and fear, will be welcomed. Those who cannot adapt to change will be free to leave and join other packs. But the days of Omegas being treated as slaves, of might making right, of cruelty disguised as tradition, those days are over. She turned to Kira, still curled on the ground. Stand up. The female warrior rose shakily, her pride shattered. You attacked me out of jealousy and anger. You wanted to be Luna so badly that you forgot to ask yourself if you deserved it. Do you want to know why Riker never chose you as his mate? Kira said nothing, but her silence was answer enough. Because you're cruel. Because you've spent years tormenting those weaker than you to feel powerful. Because leadership isn't about who can fight hardest. It's about who can protect most effectively. Sarah's voice softened slightly. But cruelty is learned. It can be unlearned. So here's your punishment. You will serve as an Omega for 6 months. You will clean, serve, and experience exactly what you inflicted on others. And if, at the end of that time, you've learned actual humility and compassion, you may reclaim your rank. The punishment was brilliant in its cruelty and mercy. Kira's face went through a dozen emotions before settling on humiliated acceptance. She had no choice. To refuse would mean exile or death. As for you, Sarah turned back to Riker. You will remain Alpha until I arrive. You will prepare your pack for transition. And then you will accept whatever role I deem appropriate for someone of your limited vision. It was a calculated insult, one that made Riker flinch, but he nodded, accepting it. Go, Sarah commanded, and send word to the surrounding packs. Tell them the matriarch has risen. Tell them a new order is coming. Tell them that any Alpha who rules through fear, rather than respect, should start considering retirement. The war party fled. Even Riker, his pride shattered, couldn't maintain dignity as he shifted and ran with his remaining wolves back toward Silverwood territory. When they were gone, Sarah finally allowed herself to shake. The adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation drained away, leaving her weak-kneed and trembling. Theron caught her as she stumbled. You were magnificent. I was terrified, she admitted. Fear and courage aren't opposites, Mara said, her amber eyes warm with approval. Courage is acting despite fear. You showed them what true power looks like. Not violence, but authority backed by absolute confidence. The prophecy is fulfilled, Lyric added. You've risen, you've claimed your power, and you've shown mercy tempered with justice. The old ways are returning. Sarah looked at the Shadow Guard, her unchained, her chosen family, her pack. We have 3 days before we go to Silverwood, 3 days to prepare for whatever comes next. Together, Theron said firmly, his hand finding hers. The mate bond between them hummed with agreement and support. Together, Sarah agreed. 3 days later, Sarah Winters walked through the gates of the Silverwood pack as their queen. The entire pack had assembled in the Great Hall, not for a ceremony of celebration, but of transformation. Riker stood at the front, his face carefully neutral as Sarah approached. The pack watched in silence, their emotions a chaotic storm of fear, awe, confusion, and for some, hope. I was born in this pack, Sarah began, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. I was raised here, taught here, and broken here. Many of you watched as I was rejected and cast out. Some of you participated in my humiliation. Others just stood by and let it happen. She let the words sink in, watched wolves shift uncomfortably. I should hate you. I should want revenge, but that's not why I'm here. She looked around at faces she'd known her whole life, some sympathetic, some hostile, most uncertain. I'm here because the old ways are broken, a system that judges wolves solely on their presentation rank, that treats Omegas as servants and Alphas as gods isn't a system. It's a cage. And I'm here to break it open. She gestured to the Shadow Guard, who stood arrayed behind her in human form. These are the Unchained. Each one was exiled, rejected, or walked away from packs that couldn't see their value. Each one is powerful beyond measure, and each one chose to follow me not because of what I am, but because of what I represent: change. Sarah turned to her parents, who stood near the back, their faces masks of shame and grief. Alaric and Vera Winters. "Step forward." They approached slowly, both clearly expecting punishment or exile. "You bound my power when I was an infant," Sarah said. "You made me believe I was weak because you were terrified of a prophecy. You let me suffer for 22 years rather than trust that I could handle the truth." Her mother's face crumpled. "We were trying to protect you." "I know." The words were softer than anyone expected. "Fear makes us do terrible things, even to those we love. You thought you were saving me from a terrible fate. Instead, you condemned me to a different kind of suffering." She took a breath. "But you also gave me something valuable. You taught me what it means to be overlooked, underestimated, dismissed. You taught me empathy the hard way. So here's what happens now. You will help rebuild this pack's social structure. You will work with the Omegas directly, improve their living conditions, give them training and opportunities. You'll spend the next year making amends for what you did, not just to me, but to every wolf who suffered under the old system. It was a path to redemption, not a punishment." Her parents looked stunned. "Thank you," her father whispered. "We don't deserve your mercy." "None of us deserve mercy," Sarah replied. "That's what makes it mercy." She turned to address the full pack. "This is how it will work now. Rank is no longer assigned at presentation. You will earn your place through your actions, your skills, and your dedication to the pack. Omegas will be trained in skills beyond servitude. Betas will be valued for their stability and diplomatic skills. Alphas will lead through wisdom and protection, not domination. And anyone who cannot adapt to this new structure is free to leave. No punishment, no shame." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some excited, some resistant, all uncertain. As for Alpha Riker, Sarah looked at him steadily. "You will remain part of this pack if you choose, but you will step down as Alpha. You'll take on the role of head warrior, a position that uses your strength but requires you to answer to higher authority. You'll train the next generation of fighters in skill and honor." It was a demotion that allowed him to retain dignity. Riker looked like he wanted to protest, but finally nodded. "I accept." "Then kneel," Sarah said quietly, not in defeat, but in acknowledgement of new leadership. Riker dropped to one knee, his head bowed. "I recognize you as matriarch. I pledge my strength to your service and your vision." One by one, the pack followed. Some eagerly, some reluctantly, but all of them bowed before the wolf they had once dismissed as the weakest among them. Sarah felt the weight of their submission, their acceptance, their hope and fear mingling together. The mate bonds in the room, the family connections, the pack dynamics. She felt all of it, understood the web of relationships that made a pack more than just a collection of wolves. And she felt Theron beside her, his chosen bond steady and sure. "Rise," she said finally. "Rise as wolves of the new order. Rise as equals in service to something greater than hierarchy. Rise as pack." And so Sarah Winter's journey from rejected Omega to matriarch was complete. The wolf they had cast out to die had returned as their queen. bringing with her a vision of pack life that honored all wolves regardless of their presentation rank. The Silverwood Pack became the first to adopt the new ways, but word spread quickly. Other packs began to question their own structures, and within months, a movement was growing. The prophecy had spoken of loss and betrayal, and Sarah had endured both, but it also spoke of healing and unity, and that was what she offered, a chance to build something better from the ashes of the old ways. Not all would accept the change. Some alphas clung to their power. Some packs resisted reform. But Sarah had the Shadow Guard, her Unchained, and she had growing numbers of wolves who were tired of living under systems that valued force over wisdom. She learned that true power wasn't about dominance. It was about lifting others up, creating space for every wolf to reach their potential. It was about mercy tempered with justice, compassion backed by strength. Would you have rejected her? Would you have been one of the wolves who stood silent as an Omega was cast out? Or would you have been brave enough to question a system that judged wolves before they had a chance to prove themselves? If you enjoyed Sarah's journey, like this video, and leave a comment telling me what your wolf rank would be and why. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter in the Matriarch series. Share this with anyone who loves werewolf stories with strong heroines and found family dynamics. The next chapter? There are whispers of an ancient evil stirring in the Northern Territories, something older than the packs, older than the prophecy itself. And it's watching the Matriarch with interest, the kind of interest that suggests the real test of Sarah's power is just beginning. Will she unite the packs in time to face it? Or will old prejudices and resistance to change leave them all vulnerable when the blood moon rises? Thank you for listening to Sarah's story. We'll see you in the next chapter, where the true cost of revolution becomes clear.